Welcome back to another wonderful video with Mr. Manticore. Right now we're going to be watching Deandemocracy, as you can clearly see here by the big bold letters. This is still season 1 because I wouldn't skip to season 2 because that wouldn't make sense to do. So I don't even know why I'm explaining that to you. If you already, I'm going to shut up. You already know how this goes. You already know what it is. You already know what season this is. Looking back on America's 37th president.
During a program of ABC Evening News, anchor Peter Jennings told viewers to look forward to next week for a special broadcast of national significance. Jennings would continue to remind viewers of the special broadcast over the next 7 nights, even referring to it at one point as the most unprecedented announcement in recent history.
Free school lunches?
A week after its first mention, Jennings reminded viewers of the special broadcast one last time, asking them to pay attention later that night for an exclusive look at the greatest gift to the American people.
Free school lunches.
Due to the anticipation built over the week, over 60 million Americans tuned into ABC,
Where did his head go?
waiting for the evening news to end and for the special broadcast to begin. There were countless theories as to what would occur, from the announcement of alien life to the declaration of an all-out nuclear war. Speculation was brewing intensely. Once the evening news program ended, a black screen with a 10-second countdown commenced with the title Deandemocracy. Some viewers, so terrified of the threat of nuclear war, reportedly experienced nervous breakdowns and ran down the street, declaring that Deandemocracy was the code name for an all-out nuclear holocaust. Yet once the countdown ended, all fears were soon replaced with tears of joy and an excitement not seen since the end of World War II.
But what would running down the street do for you exactly? I mean, if they're dropping bombs, then the last place you want to be is outside.
Let's bring them back home.
In the seconds following James Dean's presidential announcement, hundreds of thousands of neighborhoods erupted into celebration. Although other candidates had promised to end the Vietnam War, none had so accurately expressed the same anger that they had felt, which Dean had perfectly conveyed in a 15-second broadcast. Due to popular demand, the ABC Evening News was canceled the next night, replaced by a 30-minute loop of James Dean's presidential announcement. The broadcast was watched again by over 38 million Americans, and the parties continued for the rest of the week.
I think that man looks like he's getting ready to drop that baby.
Due to repeated assassination attempts on Robert Kennedy, the Democratic Party presidential debates were canceled for the 1968 election season. However, this proved to be no issue for Dean, as polls indicated that he was in the lead for the entirety of 1967 and 1968, despite having had fewer public appearances and rallies than any other candidate. The strength of his campaign relied on the powerful advertisements he directed that would air every Friday evening on ABC. The series of programs would be considered by many as another weekly TV series, and went on to become the highest-rated TV show on television after the conclusion of Star Trek in 1967.
Oh, after the conclusion of Star Trek. Okay, so now that makes more sense.
Although a presidential debate was eventually scheduled 2 weeks before the election, James Dean instead invited opponent Richard Nixon to a track to race cars on the same night. Although reluctant at first, Nixon eventually agreed and went to spend the entire day with Dean, reportedly even telling the actor, "To hell with it, I'm voting for you. You're already a better president than I'll ever be." This statement, although only a rumor, would spread like wildfire in tabloids and permanently curbed Nixon's chance for victory.
Why wouldn't you want to race cars all day, even if it's with your competitor?
On the morning of November 1st, 1968,
why would you make that
4
statement
days
out
before
loud?
Election Day, anti-Dean groups hijacked radio channels and told civilians they were fed up with James Dean and that television was ruining American youth. After the broadcast, the groups went on to cut hundreds of power lines in the southeast, effectively preventing any of Dean's presidential ads from reaching any household below Tennessee.
Well, pissing everybody
Dean quickly
off
heard of the
isn't
incident, and
the
despite
best
the
way to
risk
get
of an
them to vote
assassination, flew down to the
against
south
you.
and quickly went to work with local electricians
Did
to
I say that
repair the
right?
broken power lines.
Did I say that right?
James Dean.
I don't know if I said that right. I don't think I said that right. If you're cutting the power lines to the person because you don't like the person that everybody wants to vote for, that's not going to benefit you or your candidate. That's what I was trying to say.
Would be met with a supportive crowd, primarily younger voters who were eager to see a younger face back in the White House. Elderly white conservatives, often the parents of the younger supporters, remained in their houses and occasionally peered through their window blinds to catch a glimpse of the handsome candidate. Although it wasn't known to Dean at the time, hate groups in the South had perpetuated the idea that he was Satan in disguise, and cited his good looks and his love for jazz as being clear signs of the devil.
very extreme views. Maybe not so extreme views. Those views might be accurate. Oh, it's a commercial. Oh, I thought they were doing a deep dive inside into his mind.
James Dean is no man.
Elderly white conservatives in the Southeast would be the only demographic unfazed by his campaign, yet Dean continued to travel from state to state, repairing power lines for 4 days straight until the very morning of the election.
When they shot him.
On November 5th, 1968, James Dean received 75% of the popular vote with 395 electoral votes. Nixon congratulated Dean in a phone call the following morning, but Dean refused to acknowledge the win and instead asked to race cars again at the track.
What a sweet man. What a speed demon.
On January 20th, 1969, James Dean held his inaugural address at the official Capitol Raceway. Although presidents in the past had speeches that were typically around 20 minutes, Dean spoke for less than a minute.
I have a speech, and it has the flotsam that you people expect to hear. But that's not fair. No, that's not fair at all. I'm here for all of you. It's only fair that you speak for yourselves. My words shouldn't be louder than yours. So I
Through the
brought many other
microphone, he
guests
says.
to speak. They're just people like you and I. In the same time that many other presidents have spoken by themselves, America will speak. Thank you.
That was short, sweet, and to the point. He really
Dean
wants to get out
proceeded
and
to
race those
introduce
cars.
many groups to the microphone, including civil rights activists and Native American families. Martin Luther King Jr. would also come forward to speak in his first appearance since an attempt on his life 9 months prior. President Dean would conclude the inauguration with a brief bongo performance and went on to race Richard Nixon at the track.
The bongos?
In subsequent presidential inaugurations, those who disagreed with the elected president would instead celebrate Deandemocracy Day and protested by watching Dean's unique take on the address in place of the actual one. In a televised address, President Dean planned to inform Americans of his first 90 days in office. However, 6 seconds into the broadcast, the audio cut out and remained absent for the remainder of the speech. Although anti-Dean groups claimed responsibility and took pride in the sabotage, many civilians claimed that it benefited the president. The silent broadcast highlighted President Dean's sincere facial expressions and lively disposition, as opposed to the stern and stiff personalities of prior administrations. Viewers were proud to see a man in his prime at the most important position in the country. Ironically, President Dean's popularity grew after the technical difficulty, and film director Stanley Kubrick went on to call the broadcast the greatest silent film ever made.
How exactly does this tie into the previous videos? What does this have to do with any of the previous stuff? Was this like a buffer? Is this going to have some sort of significant importance later on in the films? Because this seemed mostly normal and completely unrelated in comparison to the other videos. The other videos all had something in common. But maybe they're just introducing another character to it as to why this might be happening. Maybe he actually is the devil. I have absolutely no idea. But that just seemed very random and out of place. And it seemed more like an informative documentary, which is why I really didn't have much to say about that. Mr. Manticore just decided he wanted to kind of rewrite history a little bit, which of course I'm completely fine with. The bongos and the Native American lady singing, playing the guitar, and Martin Luther King not being dead. I'm fine with all of those, but I struggle to see how this will fit into the puzzle piece that is statues being alive in ceremonies and seances and being blasted with nuclear radiation. But I'll figure it out eventually. I'm sure there is a clear-cut answer and that this is not going to be completely obscure and random. I'm sure it won't. But thank you for watching this informative documentary with me of the alternate timeline that Mr. Manticore has recreated and spewed out of his face hole. I hope this is as beneficial and educational to you as it was for me. And if you're in elementary school or too young or don't really know history, then completely disregard this entire video.